This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So I get a decent amount of questions each week regarding scans that I can run, or people are looking for scans. And what I'm going to show today is one specific scan that can be run, and I'll show you the actual scan in StockCharts that I think is a great starting point. You can use it in any two time frames. I'm going to show you a monthly and weekly as an example, but I think this can get you off to a really good start. As I've told you, I use ADX to kind of shrink my universe down. This is one example of a way to do that. Now, this isn't the end all be all. You'd need to run a couple other screens to find ideas, but this is a really good place to start. So let's go there, and then we'll get into the market and go through some requests. Okay, so I've got StockCharts ACP up. I do have my 4 charts up in my main screen. I call it main because this is the one that I focus in on. If I get a call from an institutional client asking me about stocks, this is typically the 4 charts that I have up that I'm trying to analyze what's going on. So it gives me a significant amount of information very, very quickly. All right, so it's a monthly chart here in the bottom left, weekly bottom right, daily in the upper right, and then another weekly here with the relative strength line and its moving average, along with RSI in 2 forms, RSI 20 and RSI 5. All right, now I am going to focus mostly on these 2, but I specifically left these charts up here because I want you to understand when I go through and I run a screen on a monthly and weekly, I also want to use the daily, and especially in this situation when I go through this scan, you'll understand in a minute why I really want to use the daily to look for signs of improvement from a structural standpoint as well as momentum. And then I also want to look for signals on the RSI and what the relative strength is doing. It just kind of gives me a nice look, this upper left chart, to see what's really going on. All right, so I've got Kinder Morgan up because it's a great example of a stock that meets the criteria of this screen. Now, first thing I want to do is just hit this edit scan. All right, let me just go back and make sure everyone sees what I was looking at. So over here, we've got on this the second tab down is scans, all right? And these are my scans. This one is, I call it strong M for monthly and then low weekly. So we can either run it, and first what I'm going to do is hit edit so you can see exactly what I've put in here. I've got this simple moving average of volume of 50. So in other words, we're looking for stocks in this list. I've shrunk the list down by saying everything needs to trade about 1 million shares a day on average, using a 50-day moving average of the volume. All right, and then I also have a market cap greater than $1 billion. So that's sort of my starting point before I get into any technicals. I think that's a good way to kind of shrink the list down and make it a little bit more workable, so you're not looking at thousands of charts or something like that. Now, I go through thousands and thousands of charts one by one using my eyes. I don't screen it down or anything like that. This is an example of something you could do if you want, but if you take my service, you know that I'm looking at anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 stocks each week and shrinking it down to a workable number for me. And then I put out a list that's anywhere from 30 to 60 stocks for the week that I think can really help narrow your focus on stocks that have either this type of momentum where it's slowed down on the weekly and maybe prepping for another move, or it's very strong on the weekly and we're looking for a pullback. So you can look for all different types of things, but this will help you in terms of identifying potential stocks. So this is a great starting point. What we're looking at is a weekly ADX line, 13.8, meaning the DI lines are at 13 and the smoothing is at 8, all right, or less than 15. All right, and then on the monthly, the ADX line 13.8 is greater than 25. All right, now I'm going to show you an example. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to close this down. I'm going to hit the run scan, and it populates very quickly. Fast scan. Results are 139 out of the thousands and thousands of charts they're going through. Now that's still a decent sized list, but what you're going to want to do is scroll through these and look for the stocks that have an overall pattern that is attractive. All right. Now, one of the things that I really like about this Kinder Morgan is we show the strength to the upside. I mean, that's clearly a power move out of this monster base, right? Big sideways, years and years going sideways. Then we show a lot of strength to the upside, where the ADX takes off out of a low ADX condition. So it was prior to the breakout, it was in a low ADX pattern. And now we've got this excessive strength where the ADX line is actually above 50, even though we've been consolidating. Now, in a way, I kind of want to see this drop down even closer to 50. Feel like maybe that could be a spot to be on the lookout for. But what I'm going to do at this point, once it gets up in this range, I'm going to look and see, okay, I've got a really high ADX on this time frame too. Both ADXs were above 50. So I know I'm probably not all that interested in trading it when it's up there where this is 50 or 60 and this is up at 50 or 60. We want to wait for, this is an oscillator, all right? We want this oscillator to come down and get a little bit more oversold. So this is actually at 8 right now. All right, as I said, in the screen, anything under 15 is probably worth watching. But this is a really good look. Let me just expand this for a minute. We've got a couple things that are really attractive about this. Number one, we've gone through kind of an ABC pattern where this has come and consolidated sideways, and the MACD, which was very overbought, has now worked its way back down. Now it hasn't gotten to the zero line, but look at what it did do. Came down, it kind of rallied back up, and now we're trying to make a double bottom above zero. Very strong, very attractive. Now while that's taking place, the ADX that was up at 50-60 has now dropped down all the way below both DI lines, and both DI lines are also below the 25 line. This is a really attractive look. It's a low volatility, sideways condition. Now what we need is we need a real sign of new emerging momentum, all right? We don't really want to, if you have a low ADX at 8, all right, if you jump the gun on this, you could be sitting here for a while. I mean, this has been down under 10, 15 for several months. So you could be sitting here watching this go sideways. So what we're looking for that I think would really kick things into gear is typically on a daily chart, we see the dynamic strength. You see how we don't have that yet? There's no real strength on the ADX line. The blue line has not crossed above 25. And even when green has tried to make a move, it's kind of dunked right down very quickly. The strongest move was actually on the red, but the red wasn't able to get the ADX above 25. So not very strong, right? So we had this kind of climatic bottom, and then we've consolidated. Now, what I'm looking for, again, are some dynamics to the upside that gets things kicking into gear. I don't think it's going to show up on a momentum basis on this time frame first. I think it's going to show up on this time frame first. So that's really what we're looking for. Get some strength to the upside, and once we start to see that, it's kind of game on. We're looking for any kind of an entry pattern. Now, the other way you could play it is you could play it close to the moving average here, and then make sure you're giving it an ample amount of room. You give it the full ATR approach that I use in my courses that will give you a little breathing room. So in case this just falters a little bit in the short term, it actually looks like it's going to be down this morning. But what I would tell you is that, it's not surprising because it's still in this consolidation pattern. All right. So we want to make sure that we're looking for stuff like this. I think if you can go through and try and identify and just kind of scroll through this, I look at this and I say, yeah, it meets the criteria, but it doesn't look all that imminent to me based on what the weekly chart has done. And so we're looking for some kind of a setup, especially if it can show up on the daily chart. Now, this one sort of intrigues me. It's a gold stock that's made a really strong move, and now it's working off this overbought condition, and it's doing it in an orderly way. The only problem we've got is that it needs a little bit more time. I'd like to see these two moving averages come together, and probably like to see the MACD come down closer to zero, or at least form some kind of a double bottom like we've seen in KMI. So start going through the list, through the screens. If you like screens, this is a good one to start. I think you can go through numerous stocks and just identify ones that have a good look to the consolidation pattern, no real violence in terms of volume or anything like that. But this is a really good look where the MACD is working its way back down to zero, and the ADX line, which was overbought near 50, has dropped down under, to a lower level down under 15.
If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. I'm on this page right now. You can see at the top, I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses now. I've individually priced them, or you can buy them as a bundle, and they are lifetime access now. So I changed that. It's not year to year. Okay. And then we have the individual package. I have about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video, weekly video for that package that covers a lot of details into what I'm seeing for the week. So if you have an interest, go ahead and take a look. Also, the book is on the book tab. You can go if this is a good place to start if you're new to my methodology.
My comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investments. All right, so I've got this list of stocks up. There's 30 stocks going across here. And what I've done is I've divided this up. So the first two columns are the daily trends. The next column is weekly trends. And the following far right column is the monthly trend. All right. Now, what I think is important to recognize, number one, you can see on the right, this is the capitalization now. Basically, I've taken the entire universe and sorted it by its capitalization. All right. So we've got some 8,000 stocks or something like that. These are the top 30 stocks in terms of market cap. And they're having, so if you look at the S&P, you can see that the top names, the biggest names, obviously a 4 trillion market cap, another 4 trillion, then 3 trillion, 2.4, 2.2, 2.0, and 1.4. I mean, all these first 6, 7, 10 stocks have a pretty big impact on the market. What these stocks are doing are going to have a huge effect on what the S&P does. All right. Now, I like to look at the top 30. This is one of the reports that I put out, and I go through each individual stock to see what they look like, what their potential is. I think it's really nice to see it in this framework so you can see, okay, we've got the majority of the trends, long-term trends based on the monthly, are in a good position. I would say we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 stocks are neutral, and they're not positive or negative, and they have one CVX, which is considered negative on the long term. But if you were to go out one more time frame, like on a quarterly chart, it really doesn't look like there's much downside, and in fact, it could start to turn back up and look a little bit more intriguing. So this doesn't really bother me at all. When I look at these and see that the big picture pattern on these are still okay, it makes me feel like you got to be careful about getting too bearish at this point. Now, we have lost a few of the weekly trends. You can see we've got a spattering of, we've got Apple's intermediate term trend has turned down, Lilly, Exxon, and then Procter & Gamble, which has formed kind of a topping pattern here. And then TMUS, you need to be careful about being too negative. This is actually a negative, really an opposing trend pattern into a long-term uptrend. So I actually have been telling my subscribers I'm watching this for a turnaround because I think this actually is setting up in a very interesting way. So you really only have a couple of stocks, even on an intermediate term basis, that have turned real bearish. And again, these are the biggest names that are going to have an impact on the market. And then we can look at the short term. Now, these are going to flip around a lot. We're going to see these moving back and forth, red, green, red, green. And right now, it's still favoring a little bit on the positive side, but it's almost half and half. And, we have some stocks that are in long-term uptrends that are, going through corrections. So you just want to be aware of what's taking place in these big stocks because these stocks are the driver of the market. I don't think it's the other way around. I don't think that because the S&P looks okay, that these stocks are going to turn up. I think it's if these stocks look good, and we have especially the first top 10 all in a bullish position or in a strong position or they're moving up, the general market's going to go up. It's going to have a very difficult time going down. So make sure you have some way of kind of maintaining what is taking place in these big stocks, and I think it's going to be very helpful to you. All right, let's start going through the individual stocks now, but first we want to start with QQQ. And one of the things that's developed here is that we finally got a violation of the 18. Now, if you notice, we've had a test, and a little violation here, but this was pretty significant because we had a gap down through. Now we've rallied up to this line, and the key is, can we form a pivot high at this level? Now, a pivot low is where we turn up and close above the low bar. You can see we made a low here and then we closed above the high of this bar. So we formed a pivot low. Now, can we form a pivot high right in this area? So that would mean we'd need to come back down and take out the low of the high bar and close below it. Even more important is if we can take out the low of this bar, we're going to have confirmation, and this 18 is going to really roll over. That's really what we're looking for now, is this line to actually roll over at this point. Very important to see if that takes place. I think it'll have some meaning, because what we're going to be doing is we're probably going to increase the odds that we're going to test the 18-week line. Come down, test the breakout area, test this weekly moving average line, maybe form some kind of a pinch or something like that on the weekly chart. And I think if all of that takes place, we're probably going to be setting up another buying chance, a good buying chance, assuming that there's not a massive amount of volatility in the way that plays out. We've got the rising 18-month and the rising 18-week underneath. They should act as a backstop of support if we do get some kind of a decline. So that's the way I'm reading this right now. Let's look at IWM. IWM's in a different position. We're looking for strength out of this to the upside. We're creating this pullback here after a move up. Now what we need is for this to take out the high of the rally. So we've created this rally peak. If we were to do something like that, I would view that very bullishly if it can play out that way. Now, if we come back down through the 18-month and kind of fiddle around, this could easily turn into a trading range, and I think we need to be prepared for that if it plays out that way. So if we get too far of a decline, this thing drops down to 200 or something like that, then I think the whole move is on hold. If it can hold the 18-month and turn up from here and get back above 225, I think we have to respect what's going on, and there's a pretty good chance we're going to see a broad expansion of more stocks participating. So we want to keep an eye on that. All right, let's look at what's taking place with this Ferrari, RACE. Like a lot of stocks, we're seeing some of these getting hit on their earnings. And I've told my subscribers that I don't like to go into earnings naked, especially if I'm trading off the daily chart. If I'm trading off the weekly and the monthly-weekly combo, I would typically be willing to give it some room, as long as I've got a little bit of room before I'd hit my stop. Like, I don't want my stop to be at 490. Right, and then have a gap like this, and then my best chance is I'm probably getting out at 450. So I'm trying to protect my stop as much as I can. I might do that with options, with a put option or something like that, to protect my holdings. But I'd be very reluctant to buy right ahead of that. I just wanted to point that out. Now, I think based on what's taking place, we need to get back above 500 to get things going again. For now, I think this move is on hold. I don't think there's a massive amount of downside in it. I just think we're kind of in probably in a trading range now. Now, this FUBO is, I think, kind of interesting. If we look at the way the monthly is starting to cup around, and we had really good volume to the upside on that gap up. And I think, we've gone through a pretty healthy correction phase. Now we have earnings coming again in a couple days, right? So I think you got to do the same thing here. You got to be very careful. If this were to trigger by coming up through 410, something like that, right before earnings, I would probably pass on it myself. Wait for the earnings to come out and see if that doesn't give you a trigger. Hopefully that's the way it could play out, but I wouldn't, be looking to do that right before the earnings. Now, this just made it through earnings, and it's causing a pullback, which is a well-needed pullback after the run that it's had. See if this can come down a little bit closer to 100, and then we'd be looking for an entry off the daily chart. Now, ideally, the way it would play out is that we get this ABC, and we'd be drawing a downtrend line, and then we'd be looking for a higher low to form, maybe somewhere around and above that 100 mark. I think that would be really good. We've got a big base and really good momentum on the monthly and the weekly, so definitely worth watching this for a pullback. Look at something like Walmart. I kind of like what's going on here. What I've been telling the subscribers is a break above 100 is a buying point, in my opinion. We had this monster move to the upside, got a spike correction that rallied back up, and now we've been forming really a spike and ledge formation. So now we're coming back up through this ledge to the upside, crossing back above 100. And we actually do have another RSI buy signal as that's clicking in. I also like the fact that the monthly bars, the last 3 monthly bars, have been very quiet, going sideways, forming these minor tails. Pretty good chance this has a decent trading move to the upside. Now, AMD came out with their earnings, and in this case, we wanted to wait to see if the earnings can cause a correction or a pullback because we had this dynamic move to the upside with really good volume, improving momentum pattern, and now the pullback might actually offer us an opportunity to be a buyer. I really didn't want to chase this, especially coming into earnings, but we might now get an opportunity to buy this on a pullback. Maybe a little bit lower in the lower 150s, something like that. I'd be watching for. Again, I'd be using the daily chart to my advantage in this situation, trying to get an entry off the daily. Let's look at something like Tesla, which had them hard move down and then it moved up and now it's kind of cupping around. The 18-week is cupping around here and it's holding the 18-month line. So I'd be watching for, I think you could do something like drawing in this little triangle formation has formed, right? And now what we want is to see if we can't get a breakout above this line with some dynamics behind it. And when I say dynamics, I mean I want some volume. I'd love to see a big green bar breakout, something like that. Let's see the green DI break out above the red, show some strength, and see the MACD getting back above the 0 line. If we got all that taking place as this cross back above and we cleared the earnings, then I think there's a pretty good chance this attempts a move to the upside that starts going back towards the old highs. Thanks for watching today. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques or find out a little bit more about my weekly report, you can go to my website at rabilstockresearch.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.